My second upload today for the 22nd of the 5th is with regard to identity theft and financial theft and property theft. It's also with regards to intellectual property theft and creative property theft and spiritual theft that I have all had first-hand experience of. I think, as we know, there's no compensation that could ever compensate or ever be enough for sexual assault or revenge porn. The damage done to a character and reputation because of that would be indescribable and just never enough. So basically, this issue of identity theft is even more serious, and it's just going to be explained as akin to curriculum vitae of an individual um, that highlights, explains the experiences, the credentials, and expertise and talents of an individual. So, as a victim of hate crime, there's been a lot of not just imposter syndrome, but identity theft and a lot of inviolability of dwellings. The career losses, the opportunity losses, the professional losses, the the loss of career and profession for a qualified educated person, and the damage done to health is a very serious concern. So when people are posturing themselves, um, or even just imposing on another person's private life and identity, it's quite a lot of quite a lot of difficult factors to come to terms with. This has been a very destructive vendetta that has ruined my career. The people that have gained from damaging me and my prospects and my opportunities and my family life have had no concern for the damages they've cost me, and they've had no concern for the damages they've done to me. So I think even just the idea of identity theft and people violating the personal information of a person and misusing that information is very serious in this day and age. And even trespassing into a person's home and violating the private life of a family is not ever condoned or ever tolerated. But in this circumstance of this vendetta, that has caused a lot of loss, emotional loss, mental loss, physical loss, health loss, and financial loss. The compensation that is owed to me would not ever be able to compensate enough. But as regards the defamation of a character, it just brings me to think about how people in this situation are concerning themselves with a spiritual identity that they have no autonomy over ethically or morally, and that they are taking credit for, and that are also altering the facts of for their own gain and notoriety. So there's a lot of factors to all of this. Um, as a woman that was married in 2015 and that's living on my own, deserted, and whose career has been damaged, whose health has been damaged, who's had these intrusions occurring, it's absolutely astonishing that authorities don't see anything the problem with it. Um, the idea of justice is to ensure that, you know, all wrongdoings are always rectified. Unfortunately, there's been the obstruction of justice, and my legal rights have been disrespected for no reason whatsoever except to facilitate culprits that are robbing me in daylight, broad daylight. So, this issue of spiritual identity is a very serious matter as well. We're all unique beings. We've all got our own individual purpose and whatnot. And as I've said in the past year or two, there are people that have perpetrated spiritual violence and that have spoken of spiritual matters that are all very contradictory to the actual ethics and principles of spirituality. So, with regards to the Human Rights Declaration, um, this situation is a huge concern. Identity theft is a heavy, heavy issue to come to terms with when people are robbing you in broad daylight, and especially when they are withholding compensation for the damages they are doing. So, this upload is with regards to spiritual intrusions, spiritual identity theft, and people acting contrary to their beliefs and faiths, and thinking that there isn't anything the matter with imposing into a family, intruding upon a personal life of a family, and ruining a family unit, and thinking they're in a position to cause further harm. As regards the mental health issues of all of this, we have also the concern of what happens to mental health patients that are victims of hate crime. What responsibility do mental health services providers take for unlawfully detaining a perfectly healthy, mentally functioning adult? And what becomes of a victim of hate crime when such unlawful and unjustifiable detainments occur to adult citizens? So these are all factors for the human rights agencies to consider. Um, Unlawful detainment isn't excusable to facilitate those that are avoiding the uh, justice um, of perpetrating um, awful errors, awful wrongdoings, etc., against an innocent mother. So, wrongdoings, offences of human rights or against human rights um, aren't tolerable, and the extent and measures and levels that people go to impinge and hinder a person's human rights just to serve their own egotistical agendas, their own self serving agendas, is all a huge concern that I'm going to continue sharing every day about these offences that are occurring, that have been denied, refuted, and that have not been acknowledged and that have not been rectified. So, spiritual identity, uniqueness of each individual, identity theft, etc. These are all the issues of concern. When a woman cuts her hair, it doesn't mean that a person unknowns to her would be in any position to make any foolish assumptions or assertions about a cropped hairstyle. Just because a woman is sporting a tattoo doesn't mean we have the plot for a Greg Larson novel. Um, People damaging family units and intruding into family homes and damaging ancestral lines and ancestral records don't have a position or any authority to cause further harm to family units and marital rights. So these are the kind of problems that are being caused in modern day society. This is 2020. Last time I checked, this is a democracy. So there's a lot of concerns with regards to medical issues, with regards to financial abuse, financial exploitation, people taking liberties with advancements without not actually adhering to policies and procedures. Children's rights are also an issue for me as an educator, as a teacher, and as a humanitarian. So people have played foul and have abused positions in society and have discussed matters that they are not au fait with, that they're not um, qualified enough to discuss, but that they have actually brazenly taken liberties in discussing publicly in name and shame to gain their own fame. But unfortunately, naming and shaming a woman whose private life they have falsely discussed or falsely, claimed inaccuracies about is defamation. And the obstruction of justice is also a factor in this issue with regards to the defamation of my character, reputation, and good name. So, those people that are acting contrary and contradictory and hypocritically against their own faith while spiritually violating this person, Emer Griffin McKelligot, um, a woman of marital desertion that has experienced adultery and financial abuse and defamation from my marriage. It's all heavy, heavy topics for any adult citizen to be contending with without justice being respected or without the constitutional and human rights being respected. So this is what happens in hate crime, and this is a huge concern for me also as a member of recovery and a person of sanity and emotional and mental sobriety, that people only in recent times are considering as a way of life. After 15 years since experiencing revenge porn, to have this occurring now again as well is all a lot to contend with. So the rights agencies that are being obstructed from assisting me, due to those obstructing my professional development and my right to a family as a mother, the circumstances that have been caused for me are absolutely outrageous, and this is 2020. So those that have damaged my role as a mother, my role as a teacher, my role as a humanitarian, these are all offences against my constitutional and human rights. So if I was an authoritarian, I'd feel pretty concerned about the damage being done to this woman and other women perhaps in society. So these are being sent on to the United Nations, and regardless of who you know and what you know, and regardless of what cost people are going to avoid honouring and respecting my human rights, I'd seriously be concerned about the future of human rights if these kind of issues and factors of hate crime are going to be ignored and swept under the carpet to safeguard guilty culprits and wrongdoers. So as grown adults and mature adults, people playing foul and playing mind games with people's existence in this entire situation need to be verified, clarified and rectified, because there's been many falsehoods, many unlawful acts and many wrongdoings that I've had to experience without honesty or integrity being applied to the circumstances. So the role of authorities and politicians and the role of human rights, etc., are all being brought into question, especially with regards to the role of the family and people intruding and imposing and thinking they're in a position to decide and designate about a family when they haven't discerned the difference between right and wrong. And those abusing the position of thinking they're going to cause further offences. I'm very concerned about the mentality of these kind of people that are abusing position and power. So the Human Rights Agency have had my applications and my updates of the horrendous circumstances that have been caused for me. There are people acting, as I've said, contradictory to their faith and thinking they're able to impose their faith upon individuals that they don't have any interaction or involvement with. So identity theft and all the other thefts that I've mentioned, the creative theft, the intellectual theft from my work since 2006, has all been violated also. So we're aware of how people try to undermine and suppress an horrendous offence against any individual by hook or crook with false facts and such. So I'm still waiting after 3 years for human rights agents to acknowledge the dangers that have been caused in society with spiritual violence occurring and with identity theft occurring and with marital issues that involve legal violations also. So the role of the family, the role of spirituality, the role of currency and financial abuse and exploitation are all issues that are incorporated into this entire vendetta There are people trespassing into my life and livelihood and family homes that have not been invited to do so and that have not been welcomed in their offences or wrongdoings against humanity.